This video would give you an in-depth view of the OR logical operator in JavaScript. We will view examples of how the OR operator is used and how its values are passed along. This is an excerpt from a course called JavaScript for Visual Learners. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And now to the tutorial. What about the logical OR operator? Let us view a few examples to see how it works. As a reminder, the logical operator would return true if at least one of its operands evaluates to true. But we should be careful here. What I just said is valid only when both operands are Boolean. As we would see in just a little bit, the rules are a bit more complicated. And in some cases, the behavior of the OR logical operator can in fact surprise you. If we view a line of code which uses the OR operator with two Boolean operands, as an example, false or true, the result would be true. This of course makes a lot of sense if you think about what OR means in the English language. If you can find a green shirt or a red shirt, buy the shirt. As long as one of the conditions is true, you can complete the action. So if we reverse the order of the operands, for example if our line of code becomes true or false, this should not matter. Once again, the condition should be evaluated as true. But I did mention that things are more complicated than they initially seem. Just as with the case with the AND logical operator, which we discussed previously, the rules that we are following are not just evaluating whether something is true or false and coming up with a result. Once again, we would be passing some of the initial values along based on a given set of rules. If we look at the description given in the MDN docs, we see the following. Return expression 1 if it can be converted to true, otherwise return expression 2. Of course, if you had seen the section on the AND operator, this should seem familiar. We are again following similar logic here. But let us think about the practical implications of following these instructions. Return expression 1, this would be the left-hand side expression, if it's converted to true. This means that if we look at our line of code, true or false, which evaluated to true, what actually happened was that the JavaScript engine looked at the left-hand side expression, evaluated it to true. In this case, we actually had the true Boolean value there, and it passed it along as the answer. It in fact never even looked at the right-hand operand. And this is an important thing to think about and understand. Even if both operands in our expression were true, both the left-hand side and the right-hand side of it, the OR logical expression would have still evaluated as true. This is where the result might start deviating from your intuition. It is very possible that what seems logical to you would be that the OR operator should only return true if one of the conditions is false. But this is not the case. And by understanding that, you would be avoiding bugs in your code. Let us again use a visual model to try to understand what the logic is here. In this case, we are showing the binary OR operator with two operands. Operand 1 is true and operand 2 is false. Operand 1 in this case would be the left-hand side operand and operand 2 would be the right-hand side operand. Let us see how we can visually show the instruction return expression 1 if it can be converted to true. Well, in this case, expression 1 is true, so it can be converted to true, of course. So we would just be passing this value along. We would in fact never even look at operand 2. You can think of this as if we have actually blocked it. And what we would simply do next is to pass the resultant value after evaluating the operand 1 expression as the final result. If you got confused about what just happened, this might be a good time to pause the video or even rewind it and make sure that you understand. If you did not understand the logic of what we just did, what I'm about to show you next might seem confusing. It turns out that the left-hand side operand in this case does not need to be of the Boolean type. It can in fact be anything, and as long as the JavaScript engine in the background converts it to true, it would simply pass the value along. For example, all numbers which are not 0 or not a number evaluate as true. So if you have the number 1 as the left-hand side operand within the logical OR operator, the final result of the expression would not be true, but it will be the number 1. Again, maybe just stop and think about what just happened so that you can continue following along. Because we can have quite a few different things as the first operand. For example, we can have an object there, and all objects also evaluate as true. And in this case, we would be passing the entire object along. So let us view a few examples. If we have true or false, 2 booleans as input, the result will be true. But the true in this case would actually be coming directly from the left-hand side operand. If we have true and true, what do you think would happen? Again, all the JavaScript engine would do would be to look at the left-hand side operand. It would determine that it evaluates to true, and it would use this as the result. Once again, the result would come directly from there. What if you have an array or true as our line of code? Well, arrays are objects, all objects evaluate as true, and therefore we would simply get the array as the result. You can probably see why things can seem confusing unless you understand the underlying logic. But what if the left-hand side operand is false? What if we have something like false or true? What would happen then? Let us again read the text instruction because it tells us precisely what would happen. Returns expression 1 if it can be converted to true, otherwise returns expression 2. We are in the second part of this sentence. Because expression 1 did not evaluate to true, it in fact evaluated to false, we would simply use the value of the second expression as the result. We would never be analyzing it inside the OR operator. So if we have false or true, the result would be true, but the reason for that would be because we are simply using the second value, the right-hand side operand of the OR expression. Let us again try to visualize this. We would look at the first expression at operand 1, and if it evaluates to false, we would simply use the value of the second operand as the result. You can think of this as if we are simply blocking the operand 1 entry and just using operand 2. Now if operand 2 happens to be true, this would be the final result of the expression. But it doesn't have to be. It can in fact be anything. It can be false. In this case, both operands would be false, so it does make sense if the final result is false for an OR expression. But when I say anything, I mean anything. It can be a string, for example the string Tom, and it can even be things such as not a number, or even an object. So hopefully there is some clarity now about what's actually being evaluated. For example, if we have false or whoops as a line of code, the answer would be whoops. And the reason for that would be because this would be the value of the second operand. So it would be quite fair for you to ask yourself the question, why is the OR operator doing this? Without a doubt, it would have been possible to define it in the expected way. We could have simply evaluated the left operand, the right operand. We could have determined whether they were true or false, and then we would have given the expected result. But it turns out that defining the OR operator the way we do can actually be quite useful. It can be useful in practice. Let me give you one example. The OR operator is quite routinely used in JavaScript to define a default value. Imagine that we have the following code. On one line we would assign the string Tom to the variable name, and on the second line we would show the value of that variable in the console. So we have console log name. But notice what we have done after name. We are using the OR operator followed by something else afterwards, another value. And the value in this case happens to be the string name is unknown. So what do you think we just did? We are obviously interested in just showing what is contained in the name variable in the console. So why are we using a logical operator? If you look at the result of this expression, you will see that the result is Tom, which of course is the string in the variable. So what do you think we just did? Well, what we just did was to use the property of the OR operator, where it will just send its second operand if the first one is false, and in this way we have defined a default. The code that we just ran never showed the default because Tom is a value which is considered truthy. It evaluates to true. But what if we have the following? What if the first line of code is let name equal to null? Imagine that we have not determined the name just yet, but we still wanted to give the name variable a value. And in this case, we have used null as an empty value. Now, what do you think would happen if we run the second line of code? Console log name or name is unknown. Well, in this case, the value contained in the variable name would be null, which is falsy. And because we have used the OR operator, JavaScript would simply take the second value, the right-hand operand of the expression, and this would be the result. We have defined a default value. And we would only use the default when the variable does not contain the needed information, when it evaluates to false. If we in fact run this code, the result would be name is unknown. So we are done with the OR operator. Hopefully this video has brought some clarity to a topic which is sometimes confusing to new people learning JavaScript.